the 37th parallel on America's haunted highway, it's Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.
Oh, oh, man, you're tickling my pickle tonight. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Pixelated Paranormal. This is episode 345. And guess what, folks? It's a late night episode, if you couldn't tell by the title. And tonight's episode does not come without some disclaimers. This episode is for mature listeners only and contains mature subject matter. Trigger warnings out the wazoo for the following: bestiality, zoophilia, and the potential mistreatment of animals, specifically dolphins. Now, that comes with an asterisk because we do not condone such treatment, such as sexual abuse or sexual relationship with animals, for pleasure or otherwise. We are completely against it. But we just want to let you guys all know these are true stories tonight that we'll be sharing. Very bizarre, and it's not overt animal abuse, but it definitely is animal abuse to a degree. But not egregious.
Well, I don't know how this whole story. I mean, I do kind of know how this whole story plays out.
You don't know what's going on tonight.
I don't. I mean, to a certain degree, I know what's going on because I think I remember hearing about this story like years ago, and. If this is in fact the story that I remember and how it played out, this is in fact animal abuse because dolphins mate for life. They have one life partner, and so like you essentially just essentially head fuck this dolphin where like it was in a committed relationship. And
ooh. Well, if that's true, maybe you can shed some light at the end of this story because I couldn't find anything about this thing being previously committed. But yeah, you know what? Let's just get into it because right now I'm moister than an oyster.
What's up, all you motherfuckers?
Teasing everybody.
Yeah, time to get drippy tonight. You know what I mean?
Now, you know the rules, folks. Tonight, it's a late night episode, so put the kiddos to bed, turn the lights down low, and maybe play a little romantic music because we need you to set the mood. Tonight's going to get a little sexy. Now,
come and get your love. down.
Oh, God. Now we're banned from YouTube.
Hey.
Tonight's stories come from salon.com, allthingsinteresting.com, mirror.co.uk, and Huffington Post. Our tale tonight starts off with neuroscientist Dr. John Lilly. Back in the late 60s, Dr. Lilly wrote a quasi-sci-fi book called Man and Dolphin, which highlighted the theory that dolphins wanted to and likely could communicate with humans. Lilly's writing sparked a scientific interest in interspecies communication that set in motion an experiment that went a bit awry with a young woman named Margaret Lavatt. Margaret Howe Lavatt was tasked with training and observing dolphins in a very unique laboratory and study center located in beautiful scenic St. Thomas. But oddly, over the years that she helped aid the studies, she found herself developing an intimate relationship with a dolphin named Peter. And things then took an odd turn and went tits up. Now, I will say this. This is not a story about a woman taking advantage of a dolphin, okay? Spoiler alert. That's not what goes on. But Margaret Howe Lavatt had loved animals since she was a little girl. One of her first memories was being given a book called Miss Kelly about a talking cat.
You really
gave it to her as a child.
You really have me confused right now because you preface this whole entire first half of this podcast if we don't condone bestiality, and then you start in with fucking like, oh, you know, tonight's story is about a lady and a dolphin, but hold on, I mean, sexually nothing happened with the dolphin.
I didn't say nothing happened, or else we wouldn't be sharing the story on a late night sexy episode. What I am saying is this lady didn't seek out a dolphin just to boink.
Oh, that wasn't her initial
Yeah.
attention. Like, it's not like
no.
Farmer Jerry. Like, I'm gonna go fuck this goat tonight. Like,
God,
you know,
you are the worst.
she was where the winds took her.
She is where the currents of the ocean took her.
Okay.
You're exactly right, man. Something about
Continue.
a joke about the motion of the ocean.
The motion of the ocean,
We're better
baby.
than that.
Yeah.
Anyway, she loved animals, and she especially liked the idea of talking to animals. This sparked a lifelong fascination with animals and how they communicate that led her to becoming a part of NASA-funded experiments back in the 1960s. Margaret would explain,
It was a story about a cat who could talk and understand humans, and it just stuck with me. And maybe that there's this possibility.
right, she's a Southern belle with a lisp.
Yep.
Unlike most children, Margaret didn't grow out of dreaming about one day communicating with animals. Her dreams came true at Christmas in 1963 when she was living in the Caribbean island of St. Thomas. I think I've been there. And if I have, I think it was pretty.
Is that where you got my
See-
dick from? My wooden dick?
No, I got your dick from Nassau, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where I bought a bag of dicks from a shop. Any hoozle. See, on the island, old Dr. Lilly had begun a long-term experiment studying large brain marine mammals for years, and oddly enough, had been funded by NASA to determine whether or not dolphins could be trained and understand and even speak English. He hoped his experiment on the Caribbean island would enable dolphins to make human-like sounds through their blowholes and enable them to communicate with humans. Dr. Lilly secured NASA's financial backing as he felt it would enable an understanding of other intelligent life forms, and they could use the information as a source of communication with intelligent life forms not on this Earth. And in the quest to learn more about dolphin-human communication, Dr. Lilly had turned a seemingly normal beachside home into a state-of-the-art laboratory, housing combination center. They called this the Dolphinarium. It was a workspace on the upper level for scientific studies and a dolphin enclosure on the bottom floor, tucked away on the picturesque shore of the Caribbean, and he called the alabaster building Dolphin Point. Anyway, Margaret's brother-in-law mentioned there was a secret lab at one end of the island where they were carrying out work studies on dolphins. Unable to resist, Margaret, who was just around 20 years old at the time, had to drive out there to take a look for herself. And after arriving at the lab, she encountered the director, Mr. Gregory Bateson, a famous anthropologist. Now, Bateson was the director of the lab and was instantly impressed by the young woman who had marched up to him boldly and blatantly and told him she wanted to be involved and would do anything she could to help the dolphin study. And Bateson, being very impressed by Margaret's enthusiasm, allowed Lovat to spend some time milling around the compound and watching the dolphins. Then, perhaps wanting to make her feel useful, he then asked her to take notes while observing them. Both he and Lilly realized her intuitiveness despite any lack of training, and suddenly he found himself offering her an open invitation to work at the lab. Soon, Margaret Howe Lavat's dedication to Dr. Lilly's project intensified. Despite having no scientific training, she was skilled at spotting animal behavior, and her place in the study was secured. And thus, she started working diligently with 3 dolphins who were named Pamela, Sissy, and Peter. Through daily lessons, she encouraged them to create human-esque sounds through their blowholes. When Margaret first met the trio of dolphins, they were housed in a sea pool below the lab, where they could be observed daily. She would first explain,
Peter, Pamela, and Sissy. Sissy was the biggest, pushy, loud. She sort of ran the show. Pamela was very shy and fearful, and Peter was a young guy, big buck. He was sexually coming of age and just a bit naughty.
and as Margaret spent more times with the majestic creatures, she formed an even closer bond with them, especially Peter. She explained,
Peter liked to be with me. He would rub himself on my knee and my foot and my hand if I allowed it. I wasn't uncomfortable as long as it wasn't too rough. In the beginning, I would put him on the elevator and say, you go and play with the girls for the day. It was just easier to incorporate that and let it happen. It was very precious and very gentle. Peter was right there, and he knew I was right there.
And so Margaret claims this became a regular part of her studies as she tried to teach Peter to speak English.
It was sexual on his part. It was not sexual on mine. Sensuous, perhaps. It would just become part of what was going on like an itch. Just get rid of that, we'll scratch it, and we'll be done and move on. I was there to get to know Peter, and that was part of Peter.
So we're just sitting here imagining now, like she's sitting there waist deep in water doing these studies, and he's just rubbing one out on the back of her thigh. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the picture everyone's painting so far. Okay, good.
Those fucking
Soon-
dolphin peckers just bloop right there for everybody to see. It's like, come on, rub it, touch it. Come on, lady.
Soon Margaret's dedication to Dr. Lilly's project intensified, but the process was becoming tedious with little indication of progress. And Margaret knew that there was still hope in the project, but maybe she should narrow her focus down to just one of the dolphins, Peter. To, just focus on training one specific dolphin. And so she persisted with Dr. Lilly that they should revamp aspects of the experiment. She hated leaving in the evening, still feeling there was much work left to do, so she convinced Dr. Lilly to let her live in the lab. They waterproofed the upper rooms and flooded them with a couple feet of water. This way, human and dolphin could occupy the same space, furthering the studies. And so as she wished, Dr. Lilly and Margaret chose Peter for the revamped immersive language experiment, and they coexisted in the lab 6 days a week. Only on the 7th day, Peter would spend time in the enclosure with Pamela and Sissy. Otherwise, woman and dolphin lived in cohabitation 6 days a week. And through this new training research method, typo on my part. And through this new training and research method, along with improving all Peter's speech lessons and voice training, Lovat also learned.
When we had nothing to do was when we did the most. He was very, very interested in my anatomy. If I was sitting here and my legs were in the water, he would come up and look at the back of my knee for a long time. He just wanted to know how things worked, and I was just so charmed by it.
Charmed might not be the word to describe how Lovat felt when Peter, an adolescent dolphin with certain sexual urges, became a bit more excited. Later, she'd go on to tell interviewers.
He would continue to rub himself on my knee or my foot or my hand.
And when he'd get a little more amorous, he'd just simply
Well,
And when he'd get a little more amorous, she would just simply relocate Peter back down to the bottom enclosure each time this happened. But with how frequently he became horny like this, constantly moving Peter down the stairs with the girls became a logistical nightmare. So reluctantly, Margaret Lovat decided to satisfy the sexual urges of the dolphin manually.
I feel really bad going on with this next part because our little country bumpkin just decided to join YouTube and said, "What's up?" So,
What's up, Tractor? Tune in to last year's Krampus porn smut episode, then Preston won't feel so bad because the things I said on that episode still make me blush.
Yeah. It was just easier to incorporate that and just let it happen. It would become part of what was going on, like an itch. I just had to get rid of that scratch, and we would just be done and move on.
With that, though, Lovat still insists.
It wasn't sexual on my part, like I said before, perhaps just sensuous. It seemed to me like it made the bond closer, not because of the sexual activity, but because of the lack of having to keep breaking. And that's really all it was. I was down there to get to know Peter, and that was a part of Peter.
That's a big part of Peter's Peter. Meanwhile,
how big is a
Drake's
dolphin dick? Did you Google that ahead of time to know like what exactly are we working with here?
No, I was a little concerned about search history and getting on some kind of weird ass list. So
Yeah.
if you want to Google that, I mean, feel free, dude.
I mean,
If I had to guess, educated guess, I'm going to say standard hot dog sized.
Really? A dolphin? Just got
I don't think they're packing that big a heat, man.
just got a little ballpark Frank.
I believe there's a hard bone that goes down in the side of it. This is science, folks. This is not perverted. Because like whales have penises and other animals have like a hard bone that actually goes into their penile area to give them a hard on. So I'm assuming, if you took a big lighter and rolled it into, a tube, probably about that big around.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. Email us, folks, if you know better than we do. I can ask Patty or Aaron. We've got some friends who are zoologists. Find out what's going on there. But meanwhile, Gregory Drake, the guy who's in charge of this whole operation, was curious about Lilly's progress and how it was growing with the study. And so he sent one of his colleagues, a 30-year-old Carl Sagan, that's right, folks, that Carl Sagan, to check on the goings-on at Dolphin Point. Let's just say Drake was a little disappointed to learn that the nature of the experiment was not as he had hoped. He had expected progress in deciphering the dolphin language. This was likely the beginning of an end for Lilly and his crew's funding. But nevertheless, Margaret's attachment to Peter only grew, even as the project waned. But things took a really bizarre, sad turn because now we're in the year 1966 and Dr. John Lilly had moved on since from his fascination with dolphin studies and had become more enthralled with the mind-altering power of LSD. Lilly had been introduced to the drug at a Hollywood party by the wife of Ivan Tors, the producer of what movie, Preston? Flipper. That's right, fucking Flipper. What a weird coincidence. Anyway, Dr. Lilly goes from a scientist with a white coat to a full-on scientist hippie. Because now Lilly also belonged to an exclusive group of scientists licensed by the government to research the effects of LSD. And so, again, in the name of science, he started dosing both himself and the dolphins back at the lab. Though he didn't dose Peter at Lavat's insistence that he stay, drug-free. And luckily enough, the drug seemed to have little to no effect on the dolphins, so that kind of shenanigan didn't go on for too long. However, Dr. Lilly's new cavalier attitude towards the animal safety alienated him from Gregory Bateson, and Bateson put a few full stops to the lab's funding. And thus, Margaret Howe Lavat's living experience with the dolphins ended.
That relationship of having them been together sort of turned into really enjoying being together. Woman and dolphin and us just wanting to fuck and missing him when he wasn't there.
Correction, up top, I made a comment saying that Drake was disappointed to learn the nature of the experiment. I shouldn't say Gregory Drake. It should have said Gregory Bateson. So I'll go back and change that.
Two people on the comment thread tonight have said that a dolphin's penis is anywhere between 6 to 13 feet long. So, I mean, they're
6 to 13. A dolphin's penis is 6 to 13 feet long. A fucking dolphin's only on the average about 6 feet long itself. Are you telling me that thing's packing it from his fucking tail fin to his nose?
That's what it sounds like.
Okay, well, my wife, who is a scientist in the medical industry, said a common dolphin's penis is about the size of a human hand. However, the size of a cetacean organ can vary widely. For example, a harbor porpoise's penis can be as long as a forearm. Explanation: the size of a cetacean organ, including the size of a dolphin's penis, can vary widely. Little is known about how the features of a male and female genitalia interact with these interactions and how they affect fertility. During mating, a dolphin's penis can hook into the female's reproductive tract and release sperm within seconds. Man, one pump chump. Whales, dolphins, and porpoises are known to have unusual vaginal folds, spirals, and recesses. It's like you got to go spelunking. Thanks, babe, for tuning in and updating us on that. And I don't know, man. Preston, you need to Google 6-foot-long whale penises on your computer.
Yeah.
Oh, oy vey. Okay, so after the scientific split between Dr. Lilly and Bateson, the experiment's funding ran out, and the pair, Margaret and Peter, were separated. And Peter was shipped 1,000 miles away to a small lab in Miami, which was a fraction the size with very little sunlight compared to the dolphinarium, also with no more visits from dear Margaret. And in the end, the separation was simply too much for a seemingly heartbroken Peter to take. He died just a few weeks later in an apparent act of suicide.
I got that phone call from John Lilly. John called me himself, and he said, Peter committed suicide.
After a full autopsy and diagnosis, the lab's vet, Andy Williamson, indeed attributed the dolphin's death to a broken heart and self-asphyxiation, stating that Margaret could rationalize the relationship. But when she left, could Peter? Here's the love of his life simply gone. Rick O'Barry from the animal rights organization called the Dolphin Project also backed the description of Peter's death as a suicide. He added that dolphins are not automatic air breathers like we are. Every breath they take is a conscious effort. If a life becomes too unbearable, the dolphin just takes a breath and they simply sink to the bottom. Then they just don't take a next breath, thus concluding our first story with a sad, heartbreaking conclusion. But as a small epilogue, Margaret Lovat stayed on the island and married a photographer who had photographed their research. They later moved back into the dolphinarium and converted it back into a family home, and together Margaret had 3 daughters with her husband. Peter, unfortunately, oofed. Well, in addition to the many penis comments we had from the viewers tonight,
Hey, they finally corrected themselves, and they said 11.7 to 19.5 inches.
Inches. Okay, I could take that.
Yeah. Could you?
How do I phrase
yeah.
that?
There it is, folks.
Try, buddy.
There you go. You heard it here. He could take 19.5 inches of dolphin dick.
Oh, man. Boy, oh, boy. It's like 2 rulers almost. 5 more interesting sex facts about dolphins that nobody asked for. They have very creative ways of seeking pleasure. David Linden, a professor of neuroscience at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, observed a male bottlenose dolphin who had found perhaps the most creative form of animal masturbation, to which this dolphin would wrap a live, wriggling eel around his penis. He detailed the bizarre technique in his 2011 book, Pleasure, which he studied the way creatures' brains react to different types of stimulation. Number 4. Gay sex is used as a wingman. Janet Mann, a professor of biology and psychology at Georgetown University, found that male bottlenose dolphins tend to engage in same-sex relations early in life and use the bonds they form to hunt for females as they get older. I wouldn't call that gay sex. That's just like bisexual, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like the Greeks. Number 3, dolphins have a gang culture around finding and keeping sexual partners. As they become bisexual later in life, the dolphins work in packs to restrict the movement of female dolphins as they wait for her to become sexually receptive. This involves protecting the females from being taken by other gangs and can often result in being violent altercations, sometimes sexual, between rival groups. We're testing a new site. This content coming soon. No, we are not. Not our podcast. That sounds like a difference between like a gang assault and an orgy.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, lovemaking can be short-lived. A study by a Brazilian university found that dolphin intercourse usually lasts for no more than 10 seconds. God dang! 2 pump chump. But can often be repeated several times within less than an hour. And number 1, humans and dolphins do have some romantic history. Sexual acts between dolphins and humans aren't anything new, especially since the Lovat Peter incident. American author Malcolm Brenner wrote a book called Wet Goddess, based on his 9-month sexual relationship living at a Florida land amusement park back in 1970. Since 2010, Brenner has gained international notoriety for his novel Wet Goddess. The novel details several months in the life of fictional college student Zachary Zimmerman, in which the protagonist meets a dolphin named Ruby at a local theme park and then falls in love with her. But here's the catch, folks. Let's segue into story number 2. Brenner claims the book he wrote is actually autobiographical, based on a series of events that happened to him in the 1970s, to which he says,
I wrote this book for dolphins because we were mistreating these animals by keeping them in captivity.
fucking trucker. Harry Trucker. Brenner is a self-proclaimed zoophile and zoophile advocate. He claims to have had sex with a female dolphin named Dolly back in the 1970s. Pause. Again, folks, we do not condone, adore, or suggest you try any of this shit. In fact, if you ever hear of any acts of bestiality, even your neighbor, your cousin, your mother, your father, you need to report this shit to the police very fast. Back to it. Describing the experience, Brenner stated they stared into each other's eyes for moments after they had intercourse, and they tried 7 different poses. Apparently, according to an article from HuffPo, Brenner claims that he started his relationship with a dolphin named Dolly back in 1970, when he was in his early 20s. Brenner was a sophomore at New College of Florida in Sarasota. A writer hired Brenner to take photographs for a children's book about a dolphin show at an amusement park in nearby Nokomis. He was given free access to the park and introduced to the staff. If Brenner is to be believed, then the dolphin courted him.
Initially, she became more and more aggressive. She would thrust herself against me. But over time, Dolly became more gentle. I found the extraordinary erotic. It's like being with a tiger or a bear. This is an animal that could kill you in 2 seconds if it wanted to.
After about 9 months, the Florida Land Amusement Park was sold to become housing. His college sweetheart was then shipped off to an oceanarium in Gulfport, Mississippi, while he said his enrollment in the Evergreen State College while he was enrolled in Evergreen State College in Washington.
I had every intention of going to visit that dolphin when I got back to the South, but it didn't work out that way. I learned the very hard way that dolphins are chattel and much more emotionally vulnerable than I'd ever imagined.
God, this guy loves him and leaves him, man. Brenner said Dolly, too, died about 9 months after the last time he had saw her.
I had this vivid dream. Wet dream, you could call it at the time, about dolphins dying in the dark environment, which proved to
like
be
this guy
right.
off, you're saying,
Yeah.
by having a dream about dolphins dying, and he woke up and he's just like, oh.
Yeah, remarkably similar to the oceanarium where she actually died.
Fuck's sake. But Dr. Denise Hertzig of the Wild Dolphin Project says glorifying human sexual interactions with other species is inappropriate for the health and well-being of any animal. It puts the dolphin's own health and social behavior settings at risk. But Brenner still insists that his relationship didn't harm Dolly the dolphin.
Some people find it hard to imagine that I wasn't abusing this animal. They didn't see me interacting with that dolphin. They weren't there. These creatures basically have free will. What's so repulsive about a relationship with both partners feel and express love for each other? And I know
what's repulsive is one's a fucking dolphin.
I know what I'm talking about here. Because after we made love, that dolphin put her snout on my shoulder. She embraced me with her flippers, and we stared at each other's eyes for about a minute. This was not some dog trying to hump my leg, okay? This was a 400-pound wild-born female dolphin, and she was an awesome creature.
Jesus Christ, man. What in the sweet, sweet fuck? Well, I included some other stuff in air quotes. I don't know if we should share them. But there's an epilogue to the article. I'll try to censor this shit a little bit because I don't want this podcast to be about fucking humans abusing animals. But judging from the collective horrified response that I had by myself, and hopefully the rest of you viewers did, it's not the first case of animals giving a handy to another. I'm sorry, it's not the first case of a human giving a handy to an animal in the name of science research. There were two publications, one from 1970 by anthropologist Frances Burton, published under the title Sexual Climax in Female Macaca Mulatta. She wanted to answer a question of whether or not female monkeys could experience sexual climax. So Burton placed the primates in a dog harness with a cat collar to restrict their movement. That seems like that's really fucking inappropriate. Then the researcher used a stimulator in the animal's vagina to see if they could incite some kind of climax in the monkey. She couldn't identify the full mission completion, but she did say that it seemed to have reached a resolution. I think in the field it's generally thought that a similar study could never get through an institutional animal use care committee. No shit, man, especially today, because that's going to border some kind of fucking weird-ass kink. The second case is that of a psychologist, Frank Beach, in his research on beagles back in the 1980s. Most of the work he did was behavioral, looking at the effects of prenatal androgens on sexual differentiation, because he noticed that in some cases of reproduction, certain animals seemed to be disinterested. So he was known to give a handy to a dog to see if he could observe their response of pleasure. And then another weird one here is that in more recent times and less formal examples, Daniel Bergner's book, What Do Women Want?, contains details of a demonstration made by a graduate student researcher, Jim Foss. A student picked up a female rat and with a tiny brush stroked their genitals, which protruded from the genitalia like a little eraser head. They would go on to stimulate the genitals a few times and put the animal back down in her cage. Swiftly after a time, the creature would then poke her nose out of the door. She would then clamp her teeth on the white sleeve of the student's lab coat and tug the woman's hand back inside the cage. She would then repeat the process, set the rat down again, and again the rodent would bite the sleeve, trying to pull the hand back into the cage. This went on and on. Yep, fucking weird. In a field of sex work, there are also exceptional cases of truth. These hands-on techniques have far more common everyday applications, such as the breeding of animals, like that of elephants, let's say, how would you word this and not sound like a fucking creep, manually stimulate them to collect a sample to be used in reproduction, as well as horses. And there's also, should you wish to YouTube it, I don't recommend it. There are videos available of trainers at SeaWorld apparently giving a handy to a killer whale. Fuck's sake, man. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Skipping these parts. These are, oh god, this thing took a huge left turn. Yep, blah, 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 blah. And then it goes on to talk about how in some cases gathering sperm samples from animals should only be used for research and manual reproduction. And it is a thin line between doing this for science and repopulation and then sexual arousal in humans. So that in short, folks, don't be fucking weird and don't be a creep, you know? That's my epilogue to it. Preston, why don't you take us home and shift gears for a little human-on-human action, shall you?
As I was going through and reading some of these, I regret this decision, but why not?
Why don't you tell the class which I asked you if you could please find me some news stories. Find us some news stories, perchance, that had to do with, like, sexual misconduct. Like, there was one about a guy who sat on an aluminum folding chair. It broke, and one of the legs went to his rectum, and he had to go get that surgically removed. There was another one of somebody forgot, in air quotes, they left their metal butt plug in and went to get an MRI, and the urban legend is that it ripped from their anus through their stomach and out their chest, thus killing them. Another one I found about dolphins seemingly not only being one of the few mammals outside of the human race to have sex for pleasure, but apparently they also enjoy peeing on each other. And a pod of dolphins was observed with many of the males swimming up to the water level, flipping over on their backs, and then peeing in arcs across 3 or 4 feet to piss on other dolphins who had surfaced. And what did you come up with, pal? What did you bring to the table?
Well, I looked up like, horrific sex stories and like didn't really get anything. So then I was like, sexual fail encounters, and then,
Okay.
3 links in from the cheeseburger.com. 52 people.
Cheeseburger.com.
Yeah.
That sounds like the guy that fucked that dolphin.
Cheese,
Florida Land wrote this
Cheez. We're bringing you the
okay,
cheese.
never mind. This is definitely reputable. Perfect. Yeah. Back off your mic just a skosh for me there, big guy. I know you're excited.
52 people share their most embarrassing sex stories. If there's one undeniable truth amongst most of the blush-inducing, shamelessly ridiculous sexual escapades, it's that sex is innately vulnerable to amazing moments of gut-wrenching embarrassment, and especially when the tension and passion is running dangerously deep. These aren't near as much of the kind of relationship ruiners as you would expect. This is number 2 right off the bat. So I was dating this very nice lady in college. She was homeschooled. Her parents were really religious, but she was gorgeous. So I figured, fuck it, why not date her? It's college. Everyone will believe we will have sex even if we didn't. Turns out she was a freak in the sheets. So we were having sex one night in my dorm room, and I'm behind her. She's bent over, head in the pillow, muffling her screams. I'm about to come, and boom! My roommate walks in. I slip out mid-hump, and as I come, so my penis slides up her butt, and I come right into my own eye. It burned like a motherfucker, so I started screaming. She was mortified. She doesn't know why I'm screaming and why my roommate is standing there at the door laughing his ass off. I couldn't believe it. And a couple of weeks later, she broke up with me because she couldn't stand seeing my roommate because she still kept up her super religious appearances. And probably because he saw her brown eye. So. Yeah. Bum, bum, bam.
This is you skimming.
Yeah, some of these are like, from stories when they were in high school, and I'm like, probably shouldn't read that one.
Oh God, no. Yeah. Maybe that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay to pull a plug on that one, pal. We should workshop it maybe.
No, it's okay. I just got to read through. I read through some of these.
This is enthralling content, I have to say.
Yeah. The most embarrassing
live, folks, as Preston reads silently to himself.
Yeah. The most embarrassing thing ever to happen to me during sex is something that has probably happened to a lot of guys here. First time with a girl who's now my ex, and about 2 pumps in, I realized I'm going to come. To my credit, it's been about 5 years since the last time I had sex, and it wasn't a problem for that for much longer than that. No, that one's actually, I told her I had to stop, but she's like, just stick it in my butt. All right, so that one wasn't, oh no, this.
What you turn into?
Yeah.
How did you manage to make it worse than dolphin fornication?
So my wife and I had worked opposite shifts and hardly seen each other for a while. I managed to hold out and not jerk off for about 3 weeks. Both managed to be at home at the same time for once, and we were furiously going at it, her on top. Our bedroom door was closed. We were just there on top of the bed. We hear the front door open, and her sister called out that she was there. My wife did not want to stop, so she just kept going. Sister opened her bedroom door, and my wife rolled up just as I was about to blow my load. I came a lot with a great fury. Probably an all-time distance records, hands-free, with her sister standing in disbelief as a volcano of semen splurted from my penis. She was so shocked she shut the door, and we all started laughing.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Give me one more. We should probably close the lid on this one for a while.
Yeah. Hold on, where was I at? Was it number 16 or was it number?
I wasn't counting, pal.
Number. Can I give you two? Can I give you 2 more?
Give me two more. Little Timmy two times.
Okay, so I used a neti pot once, one of those things where you basically pour water in one nostril and it comes out the other to help, wash your sinuses out. Anyways, so I did that, and I guess not all the water came out. Started having sexy time with a girl on top, and then all of a sudden, with me on top, and all of a sudden a gush of water came out of my nose all over her face, and it was a lot of water. I mean, a lot. I didn't realize how much could stay up in my nostril. She was pretty grossed out, but we finished.
Gross.
Yeah.
You are correct. That is a big fail.
Ugh. Ugh. Hold on, I think it was it 30, was it 32? Hold on. Oh, yeah. I was in college and I'd been sexting with this girl that I went to high school with for a few months. Our colleges were very far apart and we hardly saw each other. During winter break one year, I finally got over to her place when her parents weren't home. We started aggressively hooking up and I got her neg, and as soon as the tip of my penis went into her, I jizzed immediately. So there I was, just on top, holding my flaccid penis with a load in my hand. I was apologetic and I begged, let's go again. But she was visibly scarred and I left, and that was the last time I ever saw her.
Well,
Ooh, no, hold on, one more. Time I was banging this chick in the backseat of a car. She was sitting on top facing me. Went to give her a big old smack on the ass, and I missed, and I landed the palm of my right hand on my nut sack harder than I've ever hit myself in the nuts before. Took a minute to cry and then went on banging, baby.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Well, thanks for that, buddy. We should probably check your show and tell before you share again.
Lost a dildo on my wife's ass once. Thought it was a butt plug, but I guess it was too narrow and it got lost up in there. I had to take her into surgery to have to get it out.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. That's fucking terrible. Well, why don't we go ahead and land this ship?
Well, hold on. Let me just...
You got one more, huh?
Nope. No. It wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. All right.
Yeah. Famous last words.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. So this whole thing started because we went to a used bookstore one night before dinner, and I found this old book, and it was from Colin Waters. And it was called Sexual Hauntings Through the Ages. And that's what started off these late night episodes 4 or 5 years ago, man. But I might have to go back through and read this and pick some more out and revisit that. But yeah, this is number 7, where these stories that we share on these special rated MMA episodes have to do with the weird and the bizarre with the sexual overtone. So yeah, thanks for joining us on this, guys. Again, we can't say this enough. We do not advocate any kind of bestiality or abuse towards animals. If you ever see that kind of stuff, call the police, turn people in. That shit can't happen. Oddly enough, I'm surprised there's one story about animals, dolphins and people, let alone 2. That's really fucking weird. But anyway, with that being said, if you're on the social media, please give us a follow. Facebook, we are the Pixelated Paranormal Podcast. Instagram, we are PXL Paranormal. Over on YouTube, Presto, how we doing on YouTube?
339, I think, for subscribers there. Very cool. Let me go double check. We're up to 51 on Rumble. We gained 1 on Twitch.
Very cool.
So look, if you're watching on any of the social medias, please like and subscribe and share with all your friends. 331 is what we're up to. What did I say? I might have gave us... That was close. 331. And then, look, if you need a beard, if you want a beard, if you want to grow the best damn beard possible, if you're tired of being out in the ocean and never able to land that dolphin dick or whatever it is, and you want to spice up your ocean life, do yourself a favor. Go over to BigDobsBeardBomb.com and use promo code PXLPARA for 20% off your order. Pick yourself up some scents like bay rum, fresh, citrus, mint, classic, and sweet tobacco. You will fucking have the ocean wetter than the dolphins in this story. Let me tell you what, they'll be slippery, wet, wild. I mean, it's an ocean. You can't get much wetter than that, but you can get it wetter than that if you have Dobbs. So go over to BigDobsBeardBomb.com. Use promo code PXLPARA for 20% off your order. Get it all. Get it at Dobbs.
Wetter than a dolphin in a sweater. In Wichita, stop by, see our friends Leslie and the rest of the gang over at CD Trade Post. Stop and say hi to the wonderful Leslie. Tell her that Sean and Preston say hi when you do. Also, stop by at the Paranormal.Cafe. Grab yourself a coffee and a scone while you're at it. So, with that being said,
well, hold on, real quick.
Shower.
The Country Bumpkin wants to know. He was like, so Fallout 76. Hey, Fallout 76. Hey, maybe you're gonna have to give us at least like a solid 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30. I don't know. Daddy's got to polish a beer or two, and then we'll see what I'm like, what mood,
Fair.
What mental state I'm in.
Fair. That's true. Yeah. I'm going to grab a towel, take a cold shower. I'm going to raise this glass of aged ale that is called Cordially Yours. It is brewed to be a reminiscent of an old-fashioned. And I'm going to say, cheers to the weird shit in the world. Hug your pets. Give a little scruffing for Preston and I. And cheers to the weird shit in the world and those of us that love to talk about it.
And stay spooky and stay on the paranormal highway.
The cast at Pixelated Paranormal would like to thank you for listening to this week's episode. Pixelated Paranormal is here to tell you tales of the fantastical, the strange, the unknown. Tales that will move you a little further down the paranormal highway. If you'd like to share your own listener story, we would love to hear it. Email us at pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. Again, that's pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. We'd really love to hear from you. Again, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.